Calling all angels. Today it's personal. It is my reflection on my survival and how I narrowly escaped death or closed the window on the thought of it. How my cultivation or appropriation of friendships lasting for a short amount of time or the length of my lifetime has given me strength and inspiration to be creative, to reach for the sky instead of wallowing in my victimization. Recent podcasts have brought up the idea of guardian angels, how they were sent to protect us and help us support and protect others in our lives. Coincidence or divine intervention? Angels to protect Paul Chapikian while he became someone else's guardian angel to help protect others survive over 60 times for heaven's sake. Stephanie Wilkins and how she was on patrol to be an angel to help my mom off the ice and on many occasions while she was on patrol. Don't get me wrong, I also have a lot of angel gifts of love and celebration. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 1, When the Angels Came. Family Dynamic Conversations, where families and stories come in all shapes and sizes. I come from a family of 12. You may be an only child. What matters is caring, sharing, and finding ways to relate to one another. Coincidental songs this morning before the podcast. Don't Stop Believing. Ain't No Mountain High Enough. I'm All Right. Just to name a few, proving to me, even now, they surround me when I'm doing something fun. I'll start in childhood, when I first thought of divine intervention in my young years. This first one is titled, When the Angels Came Underwater. I'm guessing I'm somewhere between 6 and 8 years old. In Minnesota summertime, playtime, we spent at the lakes as much as we could to cool off. Our aunt and uncle Margaret and Buck Wood owned an old 1920s hotel right off the lake. Back in the day, to call it a hotel, you might picture the Ritz-Carlton or something like that, but it wasn't. It was maybe an 8-bedroom, 3-story home right on the lake, but they could and would rent the rooms out. And as time passed, it was just a place where their family could stay. Otherwise, I think they lived closer to Minneapolis, or my dad's sister Ginny lived in Bayport. It was a bit of a drive for them, so they didn't stay there all the time, but they had a place to stay so they wouldn't have to drive back and forth. This house was right on the water. It was up a little hill, so there were stairs to go down to the water. Sometimes they'd ask us to clean some of the rooms to help out, and then we would run down the stairs to the lake and cool off again. They had a boat dock just off the grass. It was rickety with dry rot, probably, but sturdy enough for children's feet to run on and jump off of. Laughing and giggling when sweat turns to goosebumps, jumping into the cool waters of Lake Washington. Why would you need angels' help, you might ask? Well, with all the frolicking and jumping about, I thought, I can do what my older brothers and sisters can do too. So I jumped in the too deep of water right along with them. I touched bottom and pushed up, and suddenly I see a small dinghy boat from the boathouse floating over my head, and I couldn't get to the surface to breathe. I see its bottom, then my head bumps it. I panic, forced down back into the water. I claw at the murky water, gulping in the disgusting lake water. The angel came. I don't know which one of my brothers or sisters realized what was happening, but my hand was grabbed and I was choking on water and it pulled me up. My eyes were bulging from fear and me coughing up water, what seemed like for ages. Thank you, angel siblings. Just a few years later, when the angels came just before Christmas. I believe I was 9 years old. In an ice-cold Minnesota December night, just a few weeks before Christmas, and we were all snug in our beds. I have very vivid memories, especially of that awful cocktail smell of smoke and wood, of fabric, skin, and hair coming from my grandfather's room. It's still fresh in my mind. We didn't have smoke alarms, only the angels, alarming, screaming, and shaking me awake. I remember grabbing blankets and boots to stand out on that frozen sidewalk, while the firemen stomped into our house, making sure the fire was out. I thought, will the fire take down our whole house? Is Grandpa okay? Will my dad be okay if his daddy's not okay? My mom's a nurse. She'll fix him. Bright red Christmas-like lights are on the ambulance, and it screamed him to the hospital, never to come back to his home. Since there were so many of us in this house, 15 people to be exact, my mom and dad slept on the hide-a-bed couch in the living room. I remember walking back into the house, teeth chattering and blankets still around us and us kids sitting on that hide-a-bed while Mom and Dad told us what happened to Grandpa. A little background. My dad's dad, Grandpa Ed, always had a pipe with him. Holding it or smoking it, its stem in his mouth while he read the newspaper, and the little puff, puff, puffs of his mouth as he smoked it. It's funny how the sound of his puffing will always be in my brain. And I immediately think of my granddaughter Harper when she's pretending to do my hair and she's pumping some spray out of a bottle and she makes that same sound. Grandpa Ed always seemed careful about tapping the tobacco out of his pipe onto the little tray. He would come to dinner, or he'd go to bed. Still to this day, I love the smell of pipe smoke. But still to this day, the thought of smoking and tobacco worries me, probably because of how Grandpa died, and how my dad smoked for years, then died of heart disease due to a few heart attacks and quadruple bypass surgery. My Grandpa Ed, from the knee down, had a wooden leg. I was probably told the story of how he did lose that portion of his leg, but I don't remember it right now. Of course, he always took off that wooden leg before he went to bed. So his routine was to read in his chair, put the pipe down, hop over to bed, and go to sleep. That night, it was cold, and he was in his chair reading, and he had a blanket over his legs. Apparently what happened, he had dozed off, and the pipe, still with smoldering tobacco in it, fell onto the blanket and started the fire. Maybe because he was dozing and half asleep, his angel tried to wake him up because the fire spread quickly around him, and he used his one foot to stamp out the blanket, waking my mom and dad downstairs. By the time they got to him, he was still alive, but badly burned. They got the fire out as much as they could, and they took him to the bathroom to put him in the bathtub to cool him down. Our angels, I think, contained that fire because Grandpa Ed's bedroom was positioned in between the other 3 bedrooms. One side of the house had 2 rooms with 8 girls in it, and on the opposite side of the house, the 4 beds with the 4 in the 4th bedroom. If that fire had spread, we would not have been able to get out of that house. The angels did come again when, a few days later, he passed in the hospital. Moving on to a more delicate time in my childhood, and not to go into too much detail, I have to thank the angels again. I had some very uncomfortable and confusing situations in my family, but going to church and hearing the stories of Jesus and what he went through, it was not anything in comparison. And it taught me forgiveness, but it also taught me what was right and what was not when it comes to protecting my body. And that's all I'll say about that. But I know I was surrounded by angels breaking apart the uncomfortable situations and allowing me to break free. This next one is titled, When the Angels Came at My Probable Abduction or Attack. I think in this next scenario, the trauma and the thought of this frightening situation created some scar tissue. The details get a little blurry. Somewhere between 14 and 16, I remember meeting many of my school buddies at our usual Friday night community center only a few blocks from my home. I think it was part of DeSmet Hall. Not sure. Gosh, my stomach kind of tightens even now recalling it and the trauma of that night. Trying to remember details about the names of buildings, the trauma stops the memory signals from firing because suddenly it feels like yesterday instead of almost 50 years ago. It was getting dark, and I said my goodbyes to my friends, ready to take my 5-minute walk home like I did 100 times before. I had about a 25-yard uphill walk. I would be turning right at the corner with one long block along the front of our high school to the next corner. Then only 2.5 blocks to my house. There were streetlights, maybe on every other block, but it felt creepy dark to me that night. I noticed a car to the side of me slowly going up the hill at the same time, but there was a stop sign at the corner, so you're supposed to slowly approach it. I turned right. The car turned right. I walked, and it moved at my walking pace. My angel whispered, "Start to run," and the car accelerated. Now, across the street from my high school, where I was now running, was St. Peter and Paul's Church. And it had a large parking lot surrounded by a chain link fence just to the side of it. The parking in front of the church off the street would have you angle your car towards the church. My angel came and told me to get that fence between us somehow. I ran across the street in front of his headlights to get to that fence. He squealed his tires to angle his car and park towards the church. I ran into the parking lot. I heard his car door open, and I started to run again. I heard him get back into his car to follow me, but he had to get into the entrance of the parking lot first, so he had to get back in his car. My heart is pounding right now as I'm thinking about this. Breathe, the angel is telling me now and at that time. I stop and turn. My fingers grasp the chain link fence as I hear his door shut again, probably thinking he can drive around to the parking lot entrance and catch me that way. I know I'm only 2.5 blocks from home, but I'm only 50 yards from my friends. As he is screeching his tires to turn around, I sprint back to my friends. They surround me in surprise, then they watch the car squeal around the corner to follow me, not knowing I now had an army of angel friends guarding me. I was shaking and crying as I pointed to that car. They understood. And 10 of my friends walked me home to the safety of my family. Angels, all of them. Moving on. I think I may have actually seen angels' wings in this next story called When the Angels Came to Take the Wheel. Back during those high school years, my good friend, Lynn Bruns Franklin, wanted to take me on a drive in her new hatchback car. Lynn is one of the most confident people I had ever knew up to that point while in high school. She was a singer. She got up on stage during our theater shows, and she nailed it every time. I was so impressed by her. I would call her a daredevil, and I think she might agree with me. She is a strong woman, and we were cheerleaders together in high school. She was always the base, and I stood on her shoulders many times. We were driving along the freeway. I think the speed was 55 miles an hour at the time, which felt really fast. She wasn't speeding, and I don't remember why. I don't know if she hit something in the road, if she swerved to get away from another car, but the car did 2 360-degree turns in that lane. And my fingernail imprints are probably still imprinted on that dashboard, wherever that car is right now. As I said, I think the angel's wings wrapped around that car and must have kept us in that one lane instead of all over and different lanes to protect us from oncoming traffic. Once we stopped spinning, Lynn's strong arms got the wheel in check and headed in that right direction, and we continued straight on our way, laughing and crying hysterically about how damn lucky we were. Oh my God, that was scary. Years later, I thank the angels for Lynn's strength and making any drivers of oncoming traffic acutely aware of our situation and steering clear of us. When the angels came for my dad. This is a tough one, even though it happened over 45 years ago. I am in high school, and over those informative years, my dad is going through the trauma of heart disease. In and out of surgeries, changing his diet, which of course changes our diet, him getting weaker and losing so much weight. His desire to see his old friends makes him almost angry. He doesn't want his naval buddies or his friends now to see him as a weak and dying man. He wants them to remember him in his Navy days, or carefree playing golf, the life of the party kind of guy. Meanwhile, I am becoming of age, whatever that means. I'm testing the waters of love and intimacy while losing the strongest man I know. I am losing the gauge of what a man should be in my life. So us kids would take turns staying home while Mom went to work. I started resenting the time away from my girlfriends and my boyfriends. On one occasion, I was giving him his meds and his water just off the kitchen where we jerry-rigged a hospital bed space for him in our small breakfast room. This way, he could stay on the first floor of his father's house and not worry about going up and down the stairs while he was so weak. After I gave him his meds, I left his side. I went back to the living room to watch TV. I heard a very weak voice as he tried to yell for me to come back. I huffed and puffed and walked back to his side to see what he wanted. He looked at me with very weak and sad eyes. He took my hand and he said, "I know you don't want to be here, Janny Pat. I'm sorry you have to stay with me, but thank you." I'm pretty sure all I said was, "It's okay, Dad." And I walked back to the living room, not caring. I'm also pretty sure I still didn't want to be there as I walked back to the living room to watch TV. Kind of a crummy attitude towards your dad, who was very weak. And I have regretted that attitude since 1978. I think his angel made sure I was there to see his final time in the hospital and in the emergency room when I watched them use the paddles to try and start his weak heart for the last time. This scene has remained etched in my brain, and it's still hard for me to watch movies or shows that shows them using this life-saving procedure of using those paddles and shocking that heart back to life, which they didn't do that day. Next, when the angels came during my surgery. At age 24 or 25, I was experiencing a very heavy monthly menstrual period. It was lasting much longer than they normally did. There was a lot more cramping, and that pain was incredible. I don't remember why I flew back to Minnesota. Maybe I was scared and thought, I want to go home. I don't know what's happening. But once there, and while driving back from the airport to Mankato, I was telling my sisters about the pain, the amount of blood, and the long length of this period. Well, the next day they took me to the hospital. I was told it was a tubal pregnancy. I remember being so scared to be cut open. I'm sure I was panicking. Laying on that gurney, I was told if I don't have the surgery, I could die. The angel sent was the trusted obstetrics doctor performing the surgery. His name was Dr. Princus, and he had delivered many of my sister's babies there in Mankato. They told me he was the best, and they trusted him. I, of course, lost the embryo, but he saved my life. Then there's the shame of telling my very Catholic mother that I had a pregnancy out of wedlock, and I still carry that scar. When I finally broke down and confessed my shame about the situation, my angel mother held me and rocked me while I cried at telling her what happened. And she told me how she felt bad, knowing how her Janny Pat wasn't comfortable telling her mom about this tragic experience and loss. Well, I never kept anything from her again. Thinking about that still kind of rocks me to my core. Switching gears slightly. 2 celebratory angels that were watching over me when the angels came during 2 pregnancies. Twice, I had 9 months of an angel with me every day to create my babies. Delivering my son Spencer from water break to delivery was 2 hours, telling me I definitely had angels watching over me and my son. I had angels on my children's father's hands driving that car to the hospital with me crying next to him. Just a quick reminder, I just a couple of years ago had a tubal pregnancy, which almost killed me, so delivering a baby was pretty scary. Once in the hospital, I'm being told, "You can't push yet, the doctor's not here." Here's me. "What? There's not one doctor in this hospital that can help me deliver a baby?" No, keep breathing. Hold on, the doctor's coming pretty soon. I said, "My mom is an OB nurse. She delivered babies all the time without the doctor even being there." No. Angels are whispering, "Just breathe, Janice. Your baby will come out when it's ready." Spencer wanted out ASAP, and he burst out into the scene. He's very laid back now and finds Zen in his life. He goes on wonderful adventures to celebrate this life. I am so lucky this angel Spencer chose me to be his mom. He blesses us with love, steadfastness, respect, adventure, and humor. Thank you, Spencer. My second angel is my daughter Samantha. She, however, was very comfortable waiting for the doctor to get there, which he was already there for her. But he was now waiting for Samantha to be ready to come out. With pride, I will tell you, she knows where she wants to go and when she wants to do it, and makes all the arrangements. Thank you, Samantha. What a wonderful gift from heaven she is when she chose me to be her mom. She blesses us with love, generosity, sweetness, courage, and humor. My angel mom, at 66 years old, and again 3 years later, would fly out from Minnesota to take care of me and my babies. What a comfort she was when they wouldn't stop crying. I didn't know what to do. She had such ease handling them. She imparted her wisdom and humor to help me cope with my insecurities. She reminded me of the courage and strength I had within me to create this miracle of life. And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't mention my angel, Bill, that came into my life during a tough time in my life. He accepts me as I am. He wants to build the future life together and enjoys being grandparents together. We are so blessed. My daughter Samantha and her husband Matt have given us 2 angels in our lives. The sweetest and entertaining Harper and happiest miracle baby Kinsley. Our lives just keep getting more and more enriched every day. There are probably 10 more examples, if not 20, how the angels came into my life, but I think I'll land the episode here. It is my opinion that the angels are ready and willing and surround us constantly, and it's okay to call on them to bring you peace, to encourage you, and to give us hope. Talking with a customer yesterday, she mentioned how the coming together of these thoughts and ideas of people and situations can help to remind us to start a project, to finish a project, or to reach out. An old friend of mine that I recently reconnected with sent me her book that was just published. It's called Virago, Awakening a Warrior by Patrice E. Hewley. Spiritual Warriors in Training. It's a series. Her preface has a first sentence, "Everyone has a story to tell." I told her that is exactly why I started this podcast. Just another angel sending me inspiration. I hope to have her on as a guest. Think about it, Patrice. I thank all the angels for appearing when I needed them most, revealing the intelligence and strength within me, protecting me in harmful situations and guiding me. I appreciate all the angels in my family and all the angels that live in the hearts of all my friends. If I ask you, dear listener, think about 3 experiences you think an angel appears in your life. I bet you could tell me 10. Please type one in the comments. Think about it, respect the outcome, and be thankful every day. That's what I try to do. Join me next time here on Family Dynamic Conversations podcast when I bring my first guest from my first season, Ann Vogt, back to join me, when we focus on communication and how to create a family culture that you want. Until next time, please take care. And if you could relate in any way, please consider the gift of clicking on the thumbs up to me and sharing with much appreciation for your time. Have a great day. Bye.